Borge Brende, President of the World Economic Forum. Mr. President, what a pleasure to see you once again. Thank you so much for taking your time.
Thank you for inviting me again.
Mr. President, the New Champion Dialogue has been advocating entrepreneurial spirit, and yet, as we see over the past few years, more similarities of the earlier Cold War. So many wonder whether we need the entrepreneurial spirit or more learning from the history.
I think we might need both. The biggest challenges in the world need international solutions. So I do hope in the years to come that there will be good relationships between the G2, China and the United States of America. I'm quite optimistic, and without optimism, you don't move anything forward. And we also, of course, need entrepreneurship, because we will need to get back growth, but the growth needs to be more inclusive. It also has to take into account that our planet is on fire. Climate change is really serious. And we know there's so many jobs that have to be created for all the young people globally, but there will be no real recovery without a trade and investment recovery.
I did notice in the mission statements put out by the World Economic Forum to achieve long-term resilience and long-term growth. Now, as we know, we are all bogged down by the short-term chaos. Now you're already graduating from this stage to the long-term solutions. Is that what you're trying to emphasize here? What are those long-term solutions?
So we are focusing on the importance of resilience. I think what we have seen the last years with COVID, but also with climate change, and also with the economic challenges and the trade challenges, is that if we don't prepare for also crisis, the cost of inaction far exceeds the cost of action. So we will need to take concrete steps in the years to come to identify the blind spots, but also to work on them and invest more money when it comes to avoiding new crises. And then when it comes to the economy, we know that it has been like a roller coaster. We need more stability. And the only way I feel to build resilience there is that we continue with the great solution and recipe that we had during the 3 last decades. We have to continue to trade with each other and invest in other countries. And we should not have this beggar thy neighbor approach. You should prosper your neighbor, as we have seen in the 3 last decades.
Some geopolitical tensions are going to be there for some time to come, probably even decades. On the other hand, these as a backdrop, many of the issues are getting ever more complicated. So people are wondering, which we should put more emphasis on, the already existing geopolitical tensions or immediate solutions to some of the immediate problems that we are facing right now. Without one, can we do the other, or the other way around? So these are all entangled, Mr. President.
So very good question as usual. I think we have to do both. I think we have to deal with the short-term challenges, and then also prepare and have the right policies for the long-term challenges that we are seeing. We have to get out of this pandemic. We also have to make sure that the weak recession, the weak recovery that we are faced with doesn't turn into a recession. And there are ways of doing so. And then we have to implement what we also agreed on in Glasgow on the climate change. But longer term, we also have to build a fairer world. We also have to make sure that the geopolitical tension doesn't then become so big. I really hope for also world leaders gathering in G20 in Bali in November, but also at the UNGA in New York in September, that we can now find things that bind us together and don't split us.
The short-term economy stagflation for the developed economies. Developing countries and emerging economies are also likely to suffer as a result of the energy and food crisis. We already see some countries went bankrupt as a result. So many are pointing out whether the global south this time, once again, will also be the biggest victim as they did before during different cycles of recessions.
I unfortunately think you are right. I think the crisis we have now seen in Sri Lanka, it was a middle-income country. And we know that hundreds of thousands of people now have to rely on humanitarian assistance. I think there can be new Sri Lankans in the year to come because we are seeing capital flowing from emerging economies, and we see the appreciation, strengthening of the US dollars. We also see that the food crisis and the soaring food prices and the energy prices really hit countries in the South and emerging economies very hard. There are some really big emerging economies that are big net importers of oil and gas and also big net importers of food. So that's a double hit. And those economies are already vulnerable. So here we also have to take serious responsibility among the G20. We have to make sure that we take every possible step now available not to see further soaring of food prices. And we also have to double down on the energy security, but also energy access. Because if this continues, we can see increased instability. And we are also at the World Economic Forum expecting much lower growth even this year than we just predicted a few months ago. And this is not the way we want the global economy to move forward. After 2.5 years of COVID, we did expect now quite substantial economic growth, and now we see the slowing. And those that are paying the highest price are those in the least developed countries, and also developing countries, but also emerging economies that need to grow and where we still know that there is a lot of poverty eradication needed to meet the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030.
As you know, the G20 is being held in Indonesia. APEC summit is also going to be held in another emerging economy, Thailand, in Asia. So how do you see, the multiple voices, the diversity of voices when policies of global governance is being drawn upon?
I think it's worrisome, the development in the global economy, that it's hitting also the developing countries and the emerging economies very, very hard. But there are ways of dealing with this. And the first thing that we have to make sure is that the geopolitical confrontations don't increase. Because if we see more wars and conflicts, it's definitely not going to be helpful. And it's the ordinary people that are paying the price of this. So what I do hope world leaders can do is that they can say there are areas where we will differ and we will not find maybe the same solutions. We may be even competing, but definitely there are areas we should come together and again get the spirit of collaboration, because global challenges do need global solutions. And we're not seeing this fully today, and that is a major concern.
We noticed that the earlier annual meeting of the World Economic Forum has been involving a lot of voices from countries transatlantic, particularly Europe and North America. And this time, during the New Champion Dialogue, many voices coming from emerging and developing countries. How do you see the different roles these platforms at different time of the year are likely to provide a reference of solutions?
So we very much appreciate the collaboration we, for example, have with the Chinese government, and also when the pandemic is over, we do hope that we physically can come back to Tianjin and Dalian, where we have our annual meeting of new champions, or Summer Davos, popularly called too. And for us, this is equally important to our Davos meeting the winter Davos. But as you also alluded to, Davos January 2023 will be crucial that we also have the strong voices from the emerging economies. We, of course, do hope to have the honor of the presence of President Xi Jinping again in Davos. His speech in Davos in 2017 was so important, where he underlined the importance of multilateralism and global cooperation. We also have big hopes that we will see people like Prime Minister Modi of India, President of Indonesia, President of South Africa coming to Davos, because this shows that the world is so multipolar, and all the key players are important when you try to find global solutions or solutions to the global challenges.
What do you see the role of China for the rest of the year during both the so-called post-pandemic recovery and also in the new brainstorm of global governance?
So China is the most important global economy together with the United States of America. If you add China and the US together, it's more than 40% of the global GDP. So a successful and prosperous China is so incredibly important, not only for the Chinese people, but for the rest of the world. And I think China's leadership on trade, investments, but also on all the renewable energy forms like solar, wind power, but also stability in China and also reviving economic growth will be very important. And we from the World Economic Forum has great collaboration also with the private sector and business in China, where we see that there is a lot of entrepreneurship and also a lot of development. So medium term and long term, I'm very optimistic on China's growth and prosperity. I think we all are now faced with short-term challenges that we have to overcome. It's based on the pandemic and the COVID. It's based on the slowing global recovery. It is also, we are seeing that climate change is not something theoretical anymore. It is really happening. And Chinese leadership in all this area is incredibly important. And we will not get out of the impasse or break any of these impasses without a better collaboration between China and the US in the years to come.
Mr. President, China has been advocating the importance of foreign investment. You see recently the Chinese leadership emphasizing on that once and again, and also the importance of trade. Mr. President, as you mentioned, I know you will also be accompanying business leaders to meet with the Chinese leadership on these issues and many more. Tell me more about what do you think likely to be the focus of discussion? How do you see business communities around the world are looking at China short and medium long term?
I think the international business community, of course, see the Chinese economy and China as very interesting for investments. I think they're also interested in learning more where is China's economy heading in the coming decade. What will the opportunities be for foreign investors in China? And also, what are the areas where China really do continue to open up for these investments? But also one area where China already is very strong is on renewables. Most of the solar panels and the wind turbines in the world are produced in China. But where do China see itself when it comes to accelerating technologies on carbon capture and storage, where we can then re-inject all the CO2 or we can sequestrate it? These are areas where I know international businesses are very interesting to hear and learn more about the Chinese path.
As you know, China just celebrated 1 year of carbon trading market anniversary here, and there were already some periodical achievements. Of course, a long way to go for collaboration with the rest of the world. Now, Mr. President, I know you are having very busy schedule during the annual New Champion Dialogue. Now, thank you so much for your time, and looking forward to the great discussions on many of the fronts you just mentioned, sir.